and I took a look at it, just kind of see where gaps might be. And nobody said that they have a well-developed business plan. Most said they are in progress, and a couple said they don't know what it is. So I thought it was a good opportunity to just kind of do a high-level overview of what a business plan is, what it's good for, and why you should consider working on that. And then it doesn't move. Let's see, did it move? Yes. And you know, as I wrote, I made up the title the easy way, but then I thought, you know, it's probably not that easy, and I don't want to mislead you, which I already did, but really the smart way. And we'll get a little bit more into why that is. But also always want to bring up our startup curve, right? It's you have an idea, you get all excited, then reality sets in, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, and I have to do all this stuff, and goes up and down, and you go kind of in this valley of despair, along with the valley of death when you have no money and things. But eventually, the idea is you find product market fit, and then you scale. And of course, the incubator UACI, we work in this, you know, as you start to kind of reality setting in, all the way to coming back out of that again. And then I like to point out it's not linear, it's really up and down and back and forth, and it's just a bit of a mess when you're in that. And that's really where we are here for you, to help you through that and make sense of it, and untangle the noodle salad in there. For that, we do use the roadmap, and I'm happy to say that most all of y'all have filled it out. I'm so excited because I'm a data nerd, so all my little boxes are almost checked. And of course, utilize that to work with your mentor. The mentors are also looking at that, and there may be some disagreement in where you are in your development. And it's really a good area to discuss and figure out, just like Patrick just said, you know, Army expected TRL 5. Maybe there, I don't know where you're at, Patrick, but maybe you're at a 2 or 3, you know, I'm just saying it. So now you're trying to figure out, you know, maybe I thought it was a 5, but they don't think so. You know, where's this discrepancy, and really dig deeper into those kinds of areas of discrepancy. So building a business plan the smart way is a roadmap number 26. So we always try to do our sessions around the roadmap. And some of you may have seen this before, where I said from pitch to business plan. So now I flipped it upside down, and I said from business plan to pitch. So sometimes people ask, you know, what do I do first? The pitch, the executive summary, the business plan. And it really depends on how much you like to write or not, how much research you want to do. A lot of people do kind of start with the pitch, because that's often a more immediate need, and it's a little bit maybe easier. And it's shorter, you know, and if you're visually inclined, you like using the PowerPoints, or they start with an executive summary, you know, putting a couple of sentences down. But some people like starting with the business plan, you know, they really want to think about everything and just kind of put it all on paper. But what my soapbox is that I'm standing on, it's all the same information all the same areas that you have to address, no matter if it's the business plan, the executive summary, or the pitch. It's the same elements, and you need to know a lot. And then it's back to this tip of the iceberg, right? In the pitch, you have a slide or half a slide sometimes. In the executive summary, you have a sentence or two. In the business plan, you have a paragraph or two, or maybe a whole page to discuss the same area. So it's all of those items that need to be addressed. And per Investopia, you know, there's different uses for the business plan, but basically, you know, the essence is it is a written plan. So it's not something you have in your head because you have this idea, you know, and then, you know, it just magically will happen. It's actually writing it down. And that is really why I like business plans, because you have to take the discipline and write it down and make sense of it. You can use it to attract outside investment. So a lot of times startups need to have a business plan if they approach angels or other investors. And then it talks a little bit about what it has. And then there's this, the traditional plan, which is, you know, the pages, like 10 to 20 pages, versus the lean startup business plan, which they kind of consider the business plan canvas as that, which, you know, I have some issues with that, but we can talk about that. So Anita's business plan uses also include plan the business. So it's not just a business plan, but it's also planning the business. It helps to communicate with the team. Sometimes you may say something or think something, but then when it's written down and everybody can see it, then it's much easier to agree or disagree on that and ask questions like, what do you mean with that or the other? It's a method to build your company story because you have all those different pieces and they have to connect. So it's really about how do you do that? You can use it to attract team members. I know a lot of you, it's, you know, you're one or two people in the company right now, the founder, maybe a co-founder, maybe one person, but you're still looking for this other person or two people or whatnot. So it's a good way to, when you have, it's kind of like this, we compare to dating, right? You had a couple of meetings with someone and then they, well, tell me more about the business. And then you can share business plan and they go, oh, I get it, you know, and I'm really excited. Or it's a good, again, a good method for conversation. We're like, here on page 3, you know, I'm not quite sure I understand what you did here. And then what I use, so UACI, we don't have a business plan per se, but we sort of have outlines of many things. And we use it for repository of data and approved language. So again, if you have several team members, you're writing a proposal or you're doing a slide or you're just being on a panel, you know, you agreed on certain language. This is your core mission. This is your core technology. This is the first go-to market. So it's, and then you have all this research data that you've done about different things, and you need just this a place to have it. So I like to think in my, you know, that the business plan is a good use for that. And planning the best business plans, and nothing planning is everything. So the business plan per se sometimes gets a bad rap. There's actually this famous guy that used to be at Kaufman that said, you know, burn the business plan, you don't need it. I heartily disagree. I think it's not so much sometimes about the document, but it's about the planning. You know, what are the thoughts? How are you thinking about this going into it, and then writing it down, because it can change. It can change tomorrow. You write it today, it can change tomorrow, but at least you have a cohesive plan. You know, it makes sense. And then if things change, you adjust the plan accordingly to make sense again. And, you know, I'm the one, I use my Google Maps thing for everything. So I always need to have a plan. So it just really helps me focus. And then what's in the plan, it's really back to this investigative, you know, who is doing what, why are you doing it, what are you doing, when are you doing, how are you doing it, and what is all this end result. So I put this back in here, you know, all those different elements that are in it addressed. And so I'm going to just go through each of the items briefly, and then I kind of like to talk first, maybe because we're recording it, and then towards the end we can have the questions. But write them in the chat if you have a question that you want to ask, like right away. Just make sure you have it in. Oh, I should probably open the chat and see, like that's okay, perfect. So I will get to that once I figure out how to do this presentation.
No questions for you, just me.
Oh, comments. Okay,
blabbering about the TRLs and what they mean, so that if people are curious, I gave them a link and a little definition to relate what Patrick had mentioned.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So TRL is definitely, there's definitions. It means things, especially, you know, in Department of Defense area, they're like super excited about the TLRRs and the Raytheons and all that. And, you know, then that's a whole nother discussion how we're trying to use that in startups. But so back to building a business plan, those are the typical components. And like I said, we'll go through each one, so I'm not going to read them right now. So company name should be pretty straightforward, right? You mention your company name and then you mention your name. So I have to, this is a soapbox moment for Anita. And sorry, I refer to myself in third person. It's kind of weird, but I don't know. I just sometimes do that. So things to consider even when you choose your company name. It's one of my pet peeves. We actually considered, you know, at some point we need to do a session about how to go about choosing a company name. And what I see a lot is the entrepreneur, the founders are pressured. They need to form an entity because for this and that and the other reason, they just, come up with a name and there it is. And then they feel like they're stuck with it, or they like it, or they hate it, and then they change it. So it's definitely sometimes also a journey, but be aware that it's normal to be a journey because it is difficult, especially as we come to item number 4 here. So first of all, consider the spelling. Is it something that people can easily spell, remember? Also pronunciation. Is it pronounced easily in English or other languages? If you're trying to do a product or be a company that might go international at some point, can other languages pronounce that? And I have some examples on the side for that. And then the meaning. Sometimes English words mean other things in other languages or vice versa. So you want to be cognizant about that. And then the URL availability. I'm actually sometimes astonished that sometimes we get companies, and they have this kind of really neat name and it's kind of straightforward. And then I say, well, it seems so straightforward. Are you able to get the URL for that, the website? And they say, oh, I haven't checked. And to me, that's almost like you need to have the URL. So always be cognizant about that. And they're adding different endings all the time. So .coms are like pretty much, that's been exploited for all sorts of names. So now we're at the .io, which is neat. So there's a whole new availability. And then also when you do go to, I like GoDaddy, I type in what I'm thinking a name should be, and then gives me suggestions. I've actually utilized that to just change a name around as well. So going to the right, a few names. So Google, everybody wants to have Google, right? As something like a Google. It's a made up name, sort of, but it's become this thing and you can Google it, right? You can make it into a verb. You can just use it for whatever. And coming up with that is just like pure, I don't even know. It's way beyond my capabilities and it's not very easy to do that. Then we have names like IBM. So originally it stood for International Business Machines. Not sure if you all know that, because they started with typewriters and other office machines. So over the years, they just changed it into IBM, and now they have the I, the actual I, a little B, and then I forget the M, I think it's just stripes, to just really get away from this, we're not typewriters anymore. We're so much more. We do storage and all sorts of stuff, right? We're really a tech company. And then we have names like Shell that have a meaning, a shell, seashell, but it seems completely unrelated to what they do because Shell is an oil and gas company, right? So it's just like weird. That you pick a name that means something, but then it's completely different in the industry you are. So sometimes it works, sometimes not. Again, those are very established companies. Xerox is something where it describes of what it is. So it is actually it's Greek for copying something with a chemical solution, I believe. That's at least what I gathered. So they use that. And then Adidas, I love this one because a lot of people don't know that's actually part of a name. So it's the name of the founder, Adi Dassler, that invented, or he started a shoe company. And so he turned his name into the company name. And sometimes it works with Adidas, it's not that obvious, or JCPenney, things like that. These days, people mostly don't like when your name is in the company because they feel it's too tied to the person. So something to be aware of. And then back to the URL. So if you do choose Spain in a web URL, you can maybe read it as chooses pain, which is of course not at all what you're intending to do. So be wary of that. And then I just always have to throw in Fahrvergnügen because I just, I'm like, what were they thinking? Like, this is one really in the US with an umlaut. Nobody understands what this is. It doesn't even have a translation, but there it was, and people made fun of it. So maybe it was good enough for the fun, but I thought It was. Is the true Puma? Yes, Puma and Adidas. So they were actually brothers. So I forget the brother's name, but yeah, they were brothers. They started a shoe company. They had a falling out over political things of all things. So the one brother moved across the river, and Puma was born. So that's how that happened. Another one of my soapbox things, and we're only on the first slide, is be reachable, please. So when you have a business plan, make sure you have your name and contact information on there. Also in your emails, please. Y'all don't know how often I have to scroll through all of y'all's emails, trying to figure out, what your cell phone number is or what your title is, because it's not in your signature line. So a little off topic, but it's so easy to have auto response for signature line. If you don't know how to do that, I'm happy to help, because you want to be reachable. If you have a business plan and you're using that to raise money or get a team member, you want to be reachable. So make sure you have your information there. For naming and all that, please see Susan, because she can help you think through on how to go about thinking about that, and also responding, do they think it's good or not? So I'll go a little bit faster in the next one. This was one of my soapbox areas. Problem, opportunity. There you want to state what product category you are, and really there is software, there's products, and there's service, right? And of course, the combination of any or all of them. So you kind of want to explain where you are very succinctly. It doesn't take a lot of time. I've seen so many presentations where at the end, the audience asks, so what are you selling, right? They're confused by Sonia, whether you're selling a product or a service or a software solution or a combination of all. So make that clear somewhere. Also, what industry you're in. So there's actually, we're going to start asking y'all for your NAICS code. That's the North American Industry Classification System. And it's self-selected. So there's a big old list of all sorts of things, and there's a tree of there where you can dig deeper and deeper to see where you belong. And it's just a standardized system. You'll need the NAICS code when you apply for SBIRs sometimes, or other things. It's for tracking and whatnot, but it's also good for when you do market research and you have your NAICS code. You can look for other companies with the same NAICS code and kind of see where they're at and what that industry is like. So we encourage you to do that pretty early when you figure out where you are and what you're doing. And then, of course, the problem, opportunity, you wanna be thinking about, why does anybody care about what you're doing? So that's really what the problem is. What problem? How big is it? Is it a mosquito bite versus a shark bite? Who needs it? Is it just something that people want? I just always get a little cynical when people say, well, everybody will need one. For toilet paper, that's true, but that's not quite innovative at this time. And I typically say, and most all the time, it's been true that my parents don't need this, whatever it is that you're inventing. And then also it's pain versus convenience. Is it, are people dying or having an injury or need help with something, or is it like for entertainment and ease of living? Those are kind of the areas you want to think about and how you fit into that. You also want to mention your unique value proposition, and that is really hard for a lot of you because you're still trying to figure out where you are, what you're doing, how is it unique. And really, what I found interesting is when I looked at some of the official definitions, it's really the customer decides what the unique value proposition is. So when you say, oh, we're the best and the fastest, well, you need to make sure that the customer agrees with that. So people, Peter, thanks. Thank you. Thanks for the mosquitoes. Anyhow, see, I get so easily distracted. I'm going to just not look at this. So just be cognizant of that. You may think it's the best thing since, sliced bread, which is pretty amazing. But you want to make sure that the customer agrees. And of course, there's this whole value proposition canvas that we'll do a session around at some point too. And it's really, how do you turn features, which is like, we are 5 times faster, better, bigger, whatever, into a benefit for the customer. And the difference is really the customer view, and this goes back to, do they care that it's 5 times faster, or do they want it, at the speed that it is right now? So it's usually the customer that decides that, and you want to capture that and then convey that in your business plan, that you understand what your customer values about your company. And there's functional, monetary, social, and psychological value. And that is functional, of course. I have my teacup here. It has a lid that seals it correctly. So I love it because when I have it in my bag and it tips over, I don't spill my tea all over. So that's my functional value. Monetary, of course, cheaper, or it's, you get a value that you feel like you're getting you're paying a good price for what you're getting. Social is, it makes me like the popular kid. I got my, I don't even know. That's like not always on my top list, so I don't even know examples. And then psychological also, I kind of put cars into that. I'm driving my Lexus, so now I feel like I'm just all, fancy. So that is that. And a lot of times you hit kind of 2 of those values, functional and monetary, or functional and social, or social and monetary, but really all 4. That's really hard. So don't think you have to hit all 4 of those. Underlying magic. So now you get to talk about your product, but in a business plan, still don't disclose proprietary information. Even though back in the days they were numbered and you kept track of who you gave them out to, now they're digital, you just don't know where they end up. And even if it's, you give it to people that you trust and you tell them it's confidential, always mark it confidential. But what you don't need to share, just don't share in documents like that. And this is really about, what is the product? What does it do? How does it work? But not to the nth degree of, at the molecular level, as I sometimes see the biotech companies describe. It's more of like, it reduces the multiplication of the cancer cells. Sometimes that's good enough, and you can maybe, if you have a patent on it, you can note that. So if somebody wants to really read more about that, they can. But it's really still pretty, high level for when you're the technologist, probably still high level on your part. And this is an area where I always feel like I can help, because when I understand it, then, it passes the test, and then some people ask more questions. And then here you also want to describe, if you have a patent on it, trade secrets, how you're protecting your intellectual property. And then also you want to understand if how other people would or wouldn't be able to enter that market. And that's a little bit, we're going into competition, but you really want to understand, and share orb comes to mind for this. Sorry to pick on you, Andy and Ping, but if there's no patent on it, it's y'all just doing it, just doing it. I know I couldn't, but what would prevent someone else to do that, and how are you preventing them? How you're able to prevent them? Do you have anything unique? Do you have unique relationships, or is there a unique method, or is it maybe in the coding that you're doing? So you really want to kind of describe that here. Business model economics. This is all about how much money are you making and exchanging, and how does all that work? We'll talk a little bit more about that with the financials, but it is, how much money do you make on those things? How many things can you sell? How is it growing over the next few years? So you do want to know about all that as well. And again, if you're very early, you don't know, you just make some wild assumptions. And then as you learn more about your business, your space, your industry, then those assumptions can get closer and narrower to what it is. And price is actually fun too. A lot of people say, well, I don't know how much to charge for this service or gadget or whatever, especially if it's software, especially software as a service, that's sometimes difficult, right? And then sometimes I like to say, well, it's $100, what do you feel about that? And they go, oh, that's way too much. And I say, well, how about $10? Oh, that's way too little. So now we have goalposts, right? It's somewhere between $10 and $100, probably. So, and then as you learn more, you narrow that down. So that's one way. And then I think I have one interesting. Funding is also on financials, but you do want to know, where's this money coming from that I need to grow and work on this business, and describe it here. Market is always a hot one, especially for our technology and science, scientific entrepreneurs and starters. You do want to know what the market is. How many people, entities are out there that might want to buy this? And, sometimes there's like, it's a $5 billion or $5 gazillion market. Well, that may be for all of the life science, but you're not addressing all of the life science market. You're making a syringe. So, you can't claim the $5 billion or $5 gazillion market for life science when you make a syringe. You want to address the syringe market. Or if you're replacing something, if you're replacing a syringe, you want to address the syringe market still because you're replacing it. And then you cannot assume that you're replacing all of it, and that's where you go through this whole TAM, SAM, SOM, the total addressable market. There's 50 million syringes, get sold every year. We are planning to replace them. So, we're going to start with, 100,000 in year one, and then eventually we'll capture maybe 30% of the market. And all this is known through your customer discovery as well, again, and also the secondary market research. So this is where we have our students in the fall again. They can help you kind of figure out what the market numbers are. And as you heard David Larwood saying earlier, so they have a comparable company and they just got acquired for, a bunch of money. So what the good news is for David is there's now a precedent, right? He can look at this company, see where they were, what stage were they in the company, how many people did they have, what did they have sales, kind of get those characteristics to kind of then go back, okay, well, we're maybe, a year off of that. So, if we do this and this and this milestone, then we can claim this market and this value. So that's kind of how this is. And then, when a lot of times we hear people, or they say, they're taking on Amazon. So it's like, well, Amazon is big. It's the incumbent, they're the big one. Yeah, the market is this much. So you're thinking you're going to capture, 80% of the market against Amazon. So we're getting a little skeptical of how that's going to work. And if you think that's how it's, that really is the goal, then we just want to understand how you think you're going to get there. And that is where you described it in the business plan. We'll be doing this and this and the other, and hence it will be so. So that is the market. Financials, always fun with our tech entrepreneurs. I have back there, please see Jody about that. And yes, you should have, again, if you're super early, you're like, I don't even know what all those words mean, to when you're a little bit further down the road, it's definitely reiterative, right? You start with just throwing some numbers out. Maybe you look at another company that's similar. Maybe it's a wish list, right? You throw down some numbers and then you learn, you talk to people, you make your key assumptions, you go from the bottom up, how much is this costing me? How many people do I need? You go from the bottom up, and then you also top down as you look at other companies, where they're at, and then you hone in on your actual numbers, which they'll never be actual because you're forecasting. You're not psychic where you say, in 5 years we're going to make $10 million. Nobody knows that. But what you need to know, and why we're emphasizing this sort of exercise, is you need to have a reason and a plausible course of action to justify those numbers. That's really what people are looking for that may look at your business plan and challenge you. And that's for your own sake. You don't want to go in and say, oh, I'm going to be a billionaire in year 2. Just because. It's like, no, you want to work through those numbers. You want to look at everything and understand, okay, if I want to be a billionaire in 2 years, what are the things I need to do today? And the financial plan can help you dissect that. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, Peter. Another big point is when you actually do a presentation to angels or other investors, or even for a grant, don't put year 1 and year 2 and year 3. Today is, we're in year 2021. People want to know, did you already start this business in 2020? And those are then now actual numbers that you've achieved? Or are you going to start all of this in 2022 or in 2021? And if you just don't know, just don't share it with other people yet. If you just don't know, you're just not ready to share this with other people. So internally, you can keep it, year 1, year 2. But then, I got to do all this stuff first, and I just don't know if I'm going to finish this year or next year. But as soon as you start sharing this, even with, people you want to attract, you should put real numbers. So another pet peeve of mine. Thank you, Peter. Go to market. Another one, super exciting and often overlooked area, especially from our science and tech entrepreneurs, is how you're going to get this to the customer, right? Because ultimately, there's always a customer at the end. It may not be a general consumer, this may never end up at Walmart, but somebody will need to buy something at some point. And you want to think about how will they know about it, your customers? How will they be able to buy it? How will you get the product or whatever to the customer? Do you need to ship it? Do you need to download it? How are they going to download it? Is there any security things about that? So is there channels? A lot of medical devices, depending on what they are, you may not go to each doctor and knock at the door and see if they want to buy it. There's already a distribution channel in place. So there's catalogs, you're one of the things in the catalog, and understand why would they pick mine over another? So just a lot of stuff around that is also how will your end customer or your customer be able to get that thing or service or software from you. And you want to describe how you're going about that in here. So this is the one where you describe. We're doing distribution challenge. We're going door to door. We are going to be on the web, and everybody's on the web. So we are special because they will find us because we already talked to them or whatnot. Or we're going to trade shows. So those are the kinds of things in here. Competition, another favorite, being a little bit on my soapbox, because a lot of times we hear there's no competition, and that's usually a little scary because usually 2 reasons. Either you don't know there's no competition, which is scary because if there's competition and you don't know about them, that's not a good place to be. Or there's no competition because nobody wants it. There's no market. So another scary thing, okay, so you're doing this best whatever thing, but there is no market, hence there's no competition. So saying there's no competition is usually a little bit naive. So we really encourage you to dig deep and again, talk to the mentor in residence and the SMEs about that, Eric, myself. Sometimes doing nothing is the competition. People are just fine. They don't want to change. They're happy with what they have. And, even if it was 5 times faster, they don't want to switch. They're just good. This one time fast is good enough for them. So you really want to be the expert on the competition, because that will give you your blueprint of how you can be better, faster, cheaper, whatever it is that you're doing. And so this is competition, substitution, and differentiation. So a lot of times when people say, well, there's nothing like this out there, dumbing it a little down, again, that's me speaking. So that will be saying, we invented margarine, and there's just nothing like that out there because, it's all those oils and we put them together and it's spreadable and it's wonderful. Well, there's butter, and butter, people use butter right now. But, it's not the same as margarine, but it's a substitution. So you just cannot underestimate the competition in whatever you do. Team, another favorite, right? Something everybody needs is a team. One person does not make a company. So here, they want what you want to write is A, where you're at right now, and then B, what do you need next? What do you need next? What do you need for the next 5 years? Seems a little scary again because it's just you and maybe a co-founder and an employee. There's 3 or 4 of you. How is this going to look like in 3 years? And again, you can be wrong, but you do need to think about it. Okay, so if we do this and then we do that, okay, we need another engineer. Oh, at this point, maybe we need a sales rep. Maybe we need an admin because at that point, we have 5 people and we have calendars and nobody will know. Maybe it's an operations manager. Just really start thinking through that. And that is something where especially Devin can help you. There's org charts, there's typical things, there's if you're a software company that has $50 million in revenue, typically you would have staff between 20 and 30 people, right? There is things out there that you can kind of gauge again. And then you can say, well, I want to be better, so I only need 20. Or I'm going to be super customer service oriented, so I need 40 because, we're going to be really hands-on. So again, it's those goalposts, and you just really need to think about that. And then in this area, feel free to use the UACI people, the mentors and everybody, as part of your team. So we don't mind being mentioned in that. Current status, accomplishments, timeline, pretty self-explanatory. And this is really for risk reduction. What have you already accomplished? How have you de-risked this thing? And then how is that giving everybody confidence that you can move forward with it? And then there's this so business plan, 10 to 20 pages, more on the 10-page side, I would like, because people don't want to read many words. But then in the appendices, you can go crazy. You can do your whole 50-page financial statements and pro formas, because when people really want to know, they can go in the appendix and dig through, but they don't want to read all of this in the main narrative. And that's where you put the resumes and the CVs. You have your 10-page CV with all the publications you did. You have pictures, so you can put that all in the back. And so just to reiterate, business plan, executive summary, same issues, same areas, different way to address them. And I should have put video on there. So there's, especially now with virtual, there's more and more emphasis on video pitches. And then usage. So if you were to go through those slides, which I will, of course, make available, and you answer all those questions, then you basically would have already completed the Arizona Innovation Challenge application. I took all of the elements from there directly into this PowerPoint. So that competition should open up anytime now. We're waiting every day. They usually give 2 to 3 weeks to fill that out. So it's a good start. It's a 2-page application. Start answering those questions, and then you can understand, oh, I don't know anything about this. Steve, Peter, Anita, help me. What does this even mean? And then, as I mentioned, the repository, you can use it to apply for other things. You can use it for your SBIR commercialization. Oh, I do have SBIR American made, because eventually you will want to ship stuff, not always, but sometimes ship stuff to the customer to make them happy. And that should be it. There's a few resources that you can click on in that, and I'm done.